At some point, maybe at 2 a.m., maybe in the middle of something that should have felt fine, a question arrives, and it doesn't knock politely, it just lands. What am I actually doing here? What is any of this for?
And the terrifying part isn't the question. It's that no matter how hard you look, the answer doesn't seem to come. And the longer it doesn't come, the heavier everything gets.
We call it existential dread, that low, persistent pressure, the feeling that everyone else seems to have found something you haven't, a purpose, a direction, a reason that makes all the noise feel worth it. And the self-help world hands you a new framework every 6 months for how to find yours.
But what if the frameworks aren't working because the premise is wrong? What if the reason you're stressed is not because you haven't found your purpose yet, but because you're searching for something that was never there to begin with?
And what if that, what sounds like the most terrifying answer, is actually the most liberating one you've ever heard?
Because nothingness, properly understood, isn't a void to be feared. It might be the blank canvas that finally gives you total freedom, and that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Welcome to the Wiser Hour, where philosophy, psychology, and real life collide into something you can actually use. Today's episode sits at the intersection of existentialism, optimistic nihilism, and what it actually means to build a life that feels genuinely yours, rather than one you've been chasing because someone told you that you should.
Hey everyone, really glad you're here for this one. Fair warning, we are going to some genuinely uncomfortable places today, but the kind of uncomfortable that tends to leave you feeling lighter on the other side, not heavier.
We're going to move through the philosophy of meaninglessness, not as a source of despair, but as a source of radical permission. From Camus to Sartre, from Nietzsche to the Stoics, from cosmic perspective to the cup of coffee in your hand right now. This episode is about what happens when you stop waiting for the universe to hand you a purpose and start living from the inside out.
And if The Wiser Hour is a show that makes you think differently, subscribe or follow so you never miss an episode. It genuinely helps this community keep growing.
And as we go today, hold this question in the back of your mind. If you knew your life had no cosmic purpose, no grand script, no final exam, what would you do today just for the sake of pure joy? We'll come back to that.
All right, let's get into it.
In 1942, a French philosopher named Albert Camus sat down and wrote the opening line of one of the most important philosophical essays of the 20th century. He wrote, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide." And before anyone misreads that, he wasn't advocating for it. He was identifying the real question underneath all philosophical inquiry. If life has no inherent meaning, why continue?
And what was his answer?
Rebellion. Camus said the honest response to a meaningless universe is not despair, and not the false comfort of manufactured meaning either. It's defiance. It's the decision to live fully, joyfully, and completely, precisely because there is no cosmic scoreboard keeping track. He called this the philosophy of the absurd, the collision between human beings who desperately want meaning and a universe that offers none in return.
And his image for this was Sisyphus, the man condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down every time, which sounds like pure torture.
Until Camus adds the line that changes everything. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not because the boulder stops rolling, not because the task becomes meaningful, but because Sisyphus owns his experience of it. The struggle itself becomes his, and in that ownership, in that defiant embrace, there is something that functions exactly like joy.
So freedom isn't found by solving the meaninglessness. It's found by refusing to be crushed by it.
Now let's go to Jean-Paul Sartre, who took this further with a phrase that sounds simple and contains a revolution. Existence precedes essence. In every object ever made, a chair, a hammer, a book, the idea came before the thing. The designer had a purpose in mind before the object existed. Sartre said human beings are the only things in the universe for which this is reversed. We exist first, and then, only then, do we decide what we are.
So there is no divine blueprint, no essential human purpose that was decided before you arrived. You weren't made for something. You arrived, and now it's yours to determine.
And Sartre understood that this is both the most terrifying and the most empowering truth a human being can face. He called it radical freedom, and the weight of it, the vertigo of being completely responsible for what your life means, he called that anguish, not as a problem to solve, as the honest experience of genuine freedom.
Which is why the search for a pre-written purpose feels so relieving in theory. It would take that weight off. If someone could just tell you what you were for, you wouldn't have to decide.
And that's exactly the trap. Nietzsche saw this in the 19th century, before social media, before the purpose economy, before the self-help industrial complex. He watched people flee from the terror of freedom into external systems, religion, nationalism, social convention, anything that would hand them a ready-made meaning and relieve them of the burden of creating their own.
And now the external systems have just updated. Instead of fleeing into one grand narrative, we scroll through thousands of them. Every Instagram life, every LinkedIn success story, every podcast host telling you the 5 steps to finding your purpose, all of them offering the same relief, someone else's meaning packaged for your consumption.
And the Stoics, who came 2,000 years before any of this, had an answer that cut straight through it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Not is this meaningful in the cosmic sense, not is this aligned with my grand purpose, just is this necessary for the life I am actually living right now with the nature I actually have?" The Stoics weren't searching for universal meaning, they were building personal integrity, one choice at a time.
Here's something worth sitting with honestly. How much of the pressure you feel around purpose right now was something you actually generated? And how much was handed to you by a culture that profits from your feeling of insufficiency? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I think the honest answer surprises most people.
And Buddhism, which has been exploring the nature of meaning for 2,500 years, arrives at something even more radical. The Buddha did not say life is meaningless. He said life is impermanent, and that our suffering comes not from the absence of meaning, but from our desperate clinging to meanings that, by their nature, cannot last. The flower is not a failure because it fades. It was never supposed to be permanent. Neither were you. And that impermanence is not a tragedy. It is the entire point.
So the search for a fixed, permanent cosmic purpose itself is a form of resistance to the nature of being alive.
And what psychology has done is map exactly what this resistance costs us in measurable, documented, often painful ways, because modern science has traced the outline of everything these philosophers saw, and the findings should make all of us reconsider how we've been relating to this question.
So what does psychology tell us about this?
Let's start with the cosmic perspective, because the psychology of meaning actually begins with scale. The observable universe is approximately 93 billion light years across. It has existed for 13.8 billion years. The entire recorded history of human civilization is roughly 5,000 years, which means if the universe's timeline were compressed into a single calendar year, all of human history, every empire, every war, every genius, every heartbreak would occur in the last 14 seconds of December 31st.
That's not depressing. That's actually kind of freeing. Because it means the presentation you're anxious about, the mistake you've been replaying for 6 months, the path you chose that you're second guessing. On the scale of what actually exists, these things are cosmically invisible.
And psychologist Dacher Keltner's research on awe, the emotion triggered by encountering something vastly larger than yourself, found something remarkable. Experiences of awe consistently reduce self-focused anxiety, increase present moment awareness, and produce what he called a small self effect. When we genuinely feel our smallness in the face of something immense, we don't feel insignificant, we feel relieved. The weight of self-importance lifts.
Which is why people consistently report feeling most at peace during experiences that have nothing to do with achievement. Watching an ocean, lying under a sky full of stars, holding something newborn. Those moments don't give you a purpose. They dissolve the need for one temporarily. And in that dissolution, something opens.
Now here's the psychological finding that sits at the center of today's episode.
Researcher Paul Dolan, a behavioral scientist at the London School of Economics, spent years studying what actually produces human happiness, and his conclusion was a direct challenge to the purpose narrative. He found that happiness is not the result of finding meaning, it is the result of two things, pleasure and purpose, but purpose defined not as a grand life mission, but simply as the felt sense that what you're doing right now matters to someone, including yourself.
So the scale is completely different. It's not what is my purpose in the universe, it's does what I'm doing right now feel like it matters? Those are not the same question, and only one of them is answerable.
And Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and founded logotherapy, made a distinction that I think is essential here. He said meaning cannot be given, it can only be found. It is always found in the specific, not the abstract. In this relationship, this work, this moment of suffering endured with dignity, not in a cosmic plan handed down from outside.
So even Frankl, who built an entire philosophy around meaning, was talking about meaning as something radically personal and present tense, not a destination, a quality of attention.
And psychologist Shelley Taylor's research on what she called positive illusions showed something fascinating and slightly uncomfortable. People who hold mildly inflated beliefs about their own importance and the significance of their choices tend to function better day to day than those with perfectly accurate self-assessments. But, and this is critical, when those inflated beliefs collapse under the weight of reality, the psychological crash is severe. The person who built their entire identity around finding their grand purpose has the furthest to fall when the purpose doesn't arrive.
Which is exactly what the existential dread at 2 a.m. is. It's not weakness. It's the collision between the story you were given about what your life was supposed to look like and the actual texture of living it.
And there's a concept from positive psychology called the experience machine, originally a thought experiment from philosopher Robert Nozick. If you could plug into a machine that gave you any experience you wanted, perfectly simulated, would you? Most people say no, and the reason matters, because it reveals that what human beings actually value is not meaning in the abstract, it's realness, contact, the actual felt experience of being alive, even when it's hard. We don't want a purpose handed to us by a machine, we want to author our own moments, however small.
So knowing all of this, what can we actually do with it?
That's exactly where we're going.
That's the part I've been waiting for.
Here's where it gets actionable. And the thread running through every practice today is the same shift from searching outward for something to be handed to you to creating inward from what you already have. These aren't tips, they're philosophical reorientations.
And I want to name something first. This isn't about becoming passive. It's not about giving up ambition or lying on the floor deciding nothing matters. Optimistic nihilism as a practice is one of the most active and demanding ways to live because it puts full responsibility on you. No cosmic safety net, no pre-written script, just you, your choices, and the life you're actually building.
The first practice is what I'd call the cosmic reset, and it's disarmingly simple. Once a week, spend 10 minutes with something genuinely vast, a clear night sky, a documentary about deep space or geological time, a piece of music that makes you feel small in a good way. And while you're in it, consciously release one anxiety that has been consuming your mental energy. Not forever, just for those 10 minutes.
Because Keltner's research shows this isn't escapism. This is recalibration. You're not avoiding the problem, you're recontextualizing it. And a problem seen from the right scale often stops being a problem and starts being just an experience you're moving through.
The second practice is what Sartre's radical freedom points toward, and I'd call it the authorship practice. Instead of asking, what is my purpose, ask a different question entirely. What do I actually value when no one is watching, when there's no audience, when nothing is being optimized? Write that down. 3 things, not what you think you should value, what you actually notice yourself drawn toward when the pressure is off. Those 3 things, not a grand mission statement, are the raw material of a life that's genuinely yours.
And there's something really important in that distinction.
because so many of the purposes people are chasing are constructed in public, designed for an audience. A purpose that collapses when no one's watching wasn't really yours.
Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, which gets badly misused, was actually pointing at this: the person who creates their own values rather than inheriting them. The person who asks, not what does society need me to be, but what do I actually affirm? That question, honestly answered, is more transformative than any 5-step purpose framework.
And harder, because it requires you to sit with yourself without the noise, which, as we've talked about in previous episodes, is the thing most of us will do almost anything to avoid.
The third practice is the one that ties everything together, and I'd call it the present tense practice, rooted directly in the Buddhist understanding of impermanence and the Stoic focus on the immediate moment. Once a day, identify one thing, one specific, ordinary thing, and decide that it matters, not because the universe assigned it significance, because you did. A conversation with someone you love, the first coffee of the morning, finishing something you started, the walk you took at dusk.
Because this is what Camus was actually saying with Sisyphus. The boulder doesn't become lighter, the hill doesn't get shorter. What changes is the relationship to the experience. Meaning isn't found in the task, it's created in the quality of attention you bring to it.
And here's the engagement question we want you to answer in the comments this week. And we want your real, honest answer. If you knew your life had no cosmic purpose, no grand script that you could fail or pass, what would you do today just for the sake of pure joy? Not what you should do, not what would look good. What would you actually do?
Drop it below, because I think those answers, unfiltered, purposeless, joyful, are going to be the most alive thing in the comment section this week. Okay, let's bring it all together.
If there's one thing I want you to carry from today, it's this. The pressure you feel around purpose is not evidence that you're missing something. It's evidence that you were handed a story about ladders and tests and cosmic significance that was never actually true. And the moment you set that story down, something unexpected happens. You stop living for a destination that doesn't exist, and you start living in the only place life actually occurs, which is now.
This is genuinely one of the frameworks that shifted how I move through my own days, because I spent a long time waiting to feel like my life had clicked into place, like purpose would arrive and everything would suddenly make sense and feel justified. And what I've slowly understood is that waiting is itself the loss. The life I was waiting to feel purposeful about was happening the entire time I was waiting.
And this crosses every culture, every century, every tradition. Camus in post-war France, the Buddha in ancient India, Marcus Aurelius in imperial Rome, Nietzsche in 19th century Prussia, they were all circling the same recognition from different directions. The good life is not the one that found its meaning. It is the one that stopped waiting for meaning to be handed to it and started building experience instead.
So here's the question we want to leave you with, and we want you to sit with this one genuinely. What part of your life have you been putting on hold, waiting for it to feel significant enough to invest in fully? What would you do differently if you accepted, right now, that the significance was never coming from outside, and that you were the only one who could make it real?
The universe doesn't care what you do, and that, if you let it land properly, is the greatest gift you have ever been given, because it means there is nothing to fail. There is only the living.
Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you'd do today for pure joy if the cosmic pressure were completely gone. This community's answers to that question are going to be worth reading. And that brings us to our closing thoughts.
So here's what we explored today. Philosophically, from Camus' absurd rebellion to Sartre's radical freedom, from Nietzsche's value creation to Buddhist impermanence to the Stoic discipline of the present moment, every tradition pointed toward the same quiet truth. Meaning is not a discovery, it's a decision. Psychologically, the cosmic perspective that dissolves self-importance, Dolan's finding that happiness lives in the present tense felt sense of mattering, Frankl's understanding that meaning is always specific and never abstract,
and the dangerous crash that follows when a borrowed purpose finally collapses, and practically, the cosmic reset to recalibrate scale, the authorship practice to identify what you actually value, and the present tense practice to make ordinary experience genuinely alive.
Realizing that nothing matters cosmically is not the end of meaning. It's the beginning of the only meaning that was ever real, the kind you make yourself, right here in the only moment that actually exists.
And if today left you feeling unmoored rather than free, that's okay. That's the honest first response. Sit with it. The vertigo of genuine freedom is not comfortable, but it is real. And real, even when it's difficult, is always better than a comfortable story that keeps you waiting for a life that never quite arrives.
If this episode gave you something worth thinking about, share it with someone who's been carrying the weight of an unfound purpose. Like the video, subscribe to the Wiser Hour, and leave your joyful, purposeless answer in the comments. We genuinely want to hear it.
Teasing. Next episode, we're going somewhere that connects directly to what we explored today about identity, change, and the strange terror of becoming someone you don't yet recognize. It's going to be a good one.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for thinking. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing. This is the Wiser Hour.